Motion to approve the March invoices.
Motion by Ms. Mizell. That was chipper, wasn't it?
Sure was.
Second by Mr.
giggly
Caldwell.
mood tonight.
Second by Mr. Caldwell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion approved. Next item of business is approval of the March 8th, 2018 minutes. Any corrections, deletions? Nothing? Take a motion to approve, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Caldwell,
Second.
second by Ms. Mizell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion approved. Approval of the April agenda. Motion to approve the agenda, please.
Chairman, we have one item to add.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Under other business, Bluegrass RV,
See.
review of a letter that they've submitted requesting storage of RVs.
So, one addition to the agenda. Everybody's good with that? We need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the one addition.
Motion by Mr. Moran,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion approved. Consent agenda?
Uh,
Don't think we have anything, do we?
I don't think so.
I think we have.
Yeah, we don't have anything on the consent agenda. Charlie, you ready to swear everybody in?
Oh, yes. Everyone signed in to speak tonight. If you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're to give tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Thank you.
The first application be FDP 2017-44 Planet Fitness, final development plan.
Okay. This is the final development plan for phase one of the shops at Cherry Point. This application was before the Planning Commission in December of 2017. And at that time, it was for preliminary approval of the whole retail area. At that time, there was some question about landscaping, a few other things. And the applicant was gonna meet with the residents again in the area. So I believe that you thought there might be some changes after that meeting, so you asked for the final development plan to return to the full planning commission. So that's why it's here tonight. And this is a request for final development plan approval for just phase one, just for the Planet Fitness building. The site is off Connector Road, between Connector Road and Cherry Blossom subdivision. This was the preliminary development plan that came before you. It included Planet Fitness in the corner, but also the rest of the proposed retail buildings in the development. The whole site's 17.32 acres. The Planet Fitness, the phase one, includes the detention pond in the back, and it's approximately 5 acres. So again, here's the site. With the preliminary development plan approval, there was a discussion of traffic issues on Connector Road, and the applicants proposed to build a road extension to Oxford Drive from Blossom Park to Oxford Drive. That was made a condition of approval that that road be constructed before occupancy of the building in phase one. So they're still proposing that road extension. This slide just shows where that road is going to be. So this is the final development plan for Planet Fitness phase one. It includes the building in the same location, parking in the same location, the layout essentially the same. The detention pond is going to be part of this phase. That detention is going to serve the whole site eventually, but it's going to be constructed with phase one. See a double row of evergreen trees along the subdivision boundary. Some other, well, I'll get into it right away. With the previous approval in December 2017, you requested them to come back. The changes that they've made after the public meeting the meeting they had with the neighborhood, they moved the dumpster to the rear of the property. It was up in this area. They've moved it back here. They've increased the plantings. Our landscape ordinance requires a landscape screen between commercially zoned property and residentially zoned property. The requirement is, there's a couple options, but one option is a double row of evergreens, minimum of 5 foot high, 1.5 inches in caliper, spaced along that boundary within a landscape buffer. They're proposing that same spacing of evergreens, but they're proposing them to be planted 6 to 8 feet in height at planting. They're also proposing a 6 foot high privacy fence, and typically with the double row of evergreens option, it doesn't require a fence, because that double row of evergreen provides both the screen and the planting. So that would be an additional additional proposal. They'd add in the fencing as well, but they're going to push it. They want to push it away from the property line up against the parking, so behind the curb of the parking lot. And then they're also proposing to screen the entire length of the property, including the detention pond. So this kind of shows their proposed additions. So the dumpster was initially up here. They're going to move it to the back. The fence will be along the curb line, so behind the curb line, instead of at the property line or in front of the trees. And this kind of shows the tree spacing as before. The preliminary showed the double row of trees extending along the back, but this is an existing mature tree line that could be counted towards our landscape requirements. So they're not at least showing on this final the trees along that eastern boundary of the detention pond. I think that's it as far as the changes from the preliminary. The landscape ordinance, or their landscape plan, meets all our ordinance requirements as far as perimeter screening and interior and perimeter VUA screening. So they've got the landscape island shown, the area shown required, the interior trees required, and then they've added the hedge with the tree plantings along the road frontage. They meet all our other requirements of the B5 district as far as setbacks, building size, maximum building area, and building height. The height of the building will be about 14.5 feet, 15 feet on the 14 feet 7 inches, something like that, along the back. And then there's kind of a parapet wall. So I think the front will be almost 30 feet at the corners. I think the applicant has some images of the building, but it'll face, it'll be fronted really on 3 sides, facing the parking and connector road to the south. And this will be a blank, essentially a blank face along the back. It'll be screened by the trees and so forth, and there are no doors proposed in the rear. No dumpsters or loading, unloading areas in the rear, but it'll be three-faced building. As far as the phasing, I've added as a condition of, so we are recommending approval just because it meets all our ordinance requirements. They've increased the planting somewhat to address the neighbors' concerns. I'm not sure if they've completely met the neighbors at where the neighborhood wanted to be, but they do meet our requirements. So any additional plantings will be, at the discretion of the Planning Commission to require. But they meet all our other B5 requirements. As far as road improvements, I did add to clarify, and this is a little bit different from your staff report, because with the preliminary I had as a condition that the road improvements be determined and bonded prior to any development after phase 1. I've kind of tightened that up and made it clear that the road improvement should be done before occupancy of the building in phase one, so that condition one is a little bit different. And then the other conditions are follow from the preliminary, that any development after phase one come back to the Planning Commission Board for full review. And that while you are approving the final development plan tonight, we haven't finished our engineering review of the construction plans, so they'll still have to go through all that and get staff approval and sign-offs after this meeting, although if you approve it tonight, you will be given final approval of this layout and these proposed improvements to the landscaping and so forth. That's all I had.
Joe, do you want to touch base on the height of the building, because they're wrong on the site plan, or do you want to let the applicant do that?
I'll let them address it because the building height varies along its frontage, so I'll let them address that.
All right.
Joe, did you also mention any further development would have to come back?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Any further development beyond phase one will come back to the full board.
And the connector road,
Yeah,
the road,
that.
did you hit that too? I've been reading all this stuff.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Just make sure you cover the bases.
all right.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
The applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Bruce Simpson. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of Planet Fitness. I had the privilege of appearing before the body in December, where we had an extensive hearing on the preliminary request that subsequently got approved. That meeting, of course, had a great deal of discussion about traffic and how to manage traffic. And we had folks from the state office, District 7, the Transportation Cabinet came and testified and responded to questions for an extended period of time. But it subsequently was approved by this body. And but during the course of the meeting, we were asked to meet with the neighbors in connection with the proposed screening plan that we had, and before we came back to you all today. And we did have a meeting, lasted about an hour and a half. Had a good turnout. We invited all the people that own property adjacent to the site, and we listened to their questions. We presented our plan, listened to their questions about it, listened to their concerns and their suggestions, and we made some changes in response to their request to do certain things. In particular, they didn't like the proposed location of the dumpster, and so we moved that, as Joe's indicated. I'll point out a few things about the changes we made in just a minute. We have a couple of exhibits on a thumb drive, but we made some changes on the dumpster. We also originally had proposed a 6-foot fence along the tree line in between the double row of stacked pine trees that we were proposing. And we had a pretty good consensus. The neighbors would say we would rather take that fence and move it up by the parking lot so you'd screen all the cars in the parking lot. And so we did that. Of course, the neighbors will address you tonight on a couple of the things that they wanted in addition to that. I think two of the principal ones were we're proposing to plant at installation pine trees 6 to 8 feet tall, 15 feet apart, a double row, and they'd be staggered. So basically you'll have, in terms of line of sight, one pine tree every 7.5 feet because they'll be staggered between each other. The neighbors wanted to see 12 to 14 foot tall pine trees. We've looked at the proposal, we think, in light of the history of the project and what was initially proposed and had been approved by your predecessors on the Planning Commission and could be built off of. And what we're proposing, more than what the ordinance requires. As Joe indicated, the ordinance only requires 5 foot tall trees. We're proposing 6 to 8 foot tall trees, plus the 6 foot fence. It is a wooden fence. The neighbors want to see a steel fence rather than a wooden fence. we're proposing, we think that a wooden fence around the parking area, the whole area of parking, would be complementary to the existing architecture of fencing in the neighborhood. The neighbors have a wooden fence pretty much along their property line, in addition to a significant tree stand. So we did have that meeting. We did make the changes, and I'll highlight those. A couple of things, just in terms of historical point. As you know, this property has been vacant and undeveloped since 2000. It was zoned 18 years ago, and it's pretty unusual to have vacant property zoned commercial that sat there 18 years undeveloped in the fastest growing county in the state of Kentucky. But that's the reality. Part of that may have been traffic issues that appeared over time. A lot of development took place after this property got zoned in the last 15 years, and a lot of that traffic's now coming to Connector Road, and we talked about that back in December. In an effort to help mitigate traffic and to improve traffic management, Planet Fitness has committed to spend over $100,000 to build a road segment between Blossom Park Drive and Oxford Drive. Pretty substantial commitment over and above what they would legally be required to do, because much of the traffic is not of their doing. It's from other developments taking place since this property was zoned 18 years ago. So we believe we've gone over and above, the minimum, have done a considerable amount of extraordinary commitments to help traffic and also to build a compatible building. I'll contrast with what previously the neighbors were facing in just a moment. But one of the issues that had some level of confusion was, and if we can go ahead and put that slide up now, the first one. Yeah, that's good. Actually, go back, just go to the next one there. No, I'm sorry, you're right, this is good, yeah. That was approved in 2006. The actual part of our building, which I'll focus on a little bit more in the next slide, is about 14 foot high. And what the neighbors are going to see, about a 14 foot high single building on this site. Back in 2006, there were 3 buildings. This has been approved since 2006. We could come in before we filed, and you all approved the plan in December. We could file a final development plan and proceed with the construction of this particular configuration. What you see there in the far right-hand corner is a 40,000 square foot building, and next to it is another structure that's over 12,000 square feet in the middle, and then in the far left-hand side is a restaurant of 3,500 square feet with outdoor seating. All along the rear of those 3 buildings is a service road that was going to be built back in here. Loading docks and loading areas all in behind here. And more than one dumpster. We have one dumpster. There's 3 buildings. They'll have at least one each. And probably this building, which could be a boutique grocery store like a Whole Foods or something, it could have a compactor and probably several dumpsters at this location. This was all approved. This is what the neighbors were facing before we filed our plan and before you all approved it in December. So all the trucks, the delivery trucks, would come back here real close to the neighbors, providing services. You could have outdoor seating in the restaurant. They did ask us about that, which came up the last time. Planet Fitness will be open 24 hours. Any of the particular uses in any of these buildings could also be open 24 hours. And all of the backs of these buildings here open up to the neighbors. The Planet Fitness doesn't have any access toward the neighbors. There's no service road. There's no dumpster. There's nothing back there except for green space. So We believe the proposal that we came forward with to develop the property that you all approved in December that changed this particular location was an improvement. In addition to the things that I mentioned about the service road, the delivery trucks, the extra dumpsters, each of these properties, there's 10 properties along this boundary here, 9 on Spyglass and 1 on Riviera. Each of these properties would be much closer to existing buildings than what the single Planet Fitness building, which is what we're proposing right here. On the right-hand side, we did a table and actually measured the distances from each of the houses on Spyglass and Riviera to the closest buildings that were approved before we submitted our proposal and that you approved in December. And the average distance from each of these houses to the closest building of their house is specified over here. And that average distance, and just in terms of the average distance, was 237 feet. The average distance, 158 feet. So the average distance from each house is 158 feet. The average distance to the Planet Fitness is 237 feet, a considerable distance. Of course, it's closer for the few houses up here, but then they were all pretty close to these buildings anyway. We have all of that measurement down here. And we don't know how tall these buildings were, but I would suspect they would be at least 14 feet tall in the back facing the neighbors, if not taller. That is submitted for your all's consideration in terms of the context of what had been approved, what could be built off of before the hearing in December when we changed the plan. We didn't come up with this plan in 2006. A different owner of the property did, and obviously it struggled, and we're proposing in our phase 1 to have the Planet Fitness building. If we go to the next slide, we did the actual measurements of, go back one more slide. I just want to cover that distance again. Thank you. Down here's the Planet Fitness. We did the actual measurements of the Planet Fitness, and that's where the average is 237. The back wall is 14 feet. We do have a parapet of about 6 feet along the sides here. The front has a higher elevation because of some architectural features, the brand of Planet Fitness that faces out toward Connector Road. But what the neighbors would see in terms of buildings, in terms of the direct line of sight, particularly the closest ones that will look to it, is a 14-foot tall building. The building is set back 100 feet from the property line. We'll have the 6-foot fence all around the parking area here to screen all of the cars. The dumpster will be behind the fence, and also in a self-contained wall around the dumpster on 3 sides, and then a gate to provide access right here. Also further away from the neighbors than the previous development plan that you all approved in December. So the building is much farther away from most of the neighbors. We've relocated the dumpster. We've enhanced the screening over and above what the ordinance requires, and we believe we have made significant contributions to deal with the concerns of the neighbors. Now, there aren't 12 to 14-foot tall pine trees, and there's not a steel fence, but we believe, in light of what the neighbors were looking at before, they don't have to deal with an outdoor patio and people having a good time late at night. They won't have that noise. The Planet Fitness is all inside. There's no outside access from back here toward the neighbors. People are in there working out. They're not going to hear them. It's probably one of the lowest in terms of intensity of use that you could have for a commercial site like this that would be up next to the neighborhood. And it takes up the whole northern boundary so that they don't have to worry about some future use coming in that would be different than this, because this is the building and this is the parking and of course the detention. Now we'll have hopefully down the road toward the Connector Road, we'll have some other development come online, perhaps a restaurant or two. We don't know. There's nothing specifically lined up. But it will be much less intensity of use than a 40,000 square foot building, 12,000 square foot building, 3,500 square foot restaurant with a service road, multiple dumpsters, and loading docks. So we believe we've actually benefited the neighborhood by making a quieter use, less intrusive, with more screening. We, as Joe has said, we have met all of the objective standards of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations and are entitled to be approved. The next slide, Mark McCain is a landscape architect. He looked at what the neighbors would see in terms of line of sight at various points. And I'm gonna have Mark come up and explain to you very briefly. It's illustrated down here in terms of a 6-foot person was standing in the backyard of, I think it's 100 Spyglass, looking toward the building, looking at the 14-foot structure that's 100 feet from the property line. Mark, can you kind of explain what you looked at and to give a visualization of what the neighbors would see with the 6 to 8 foot tall trees that we're proposing, double row and staggered, in terms of what they'd actually be able to see in terms of our building and how at the rate of growth it would, and how quick it would cover up the entire structure that we're proposing to be built.
Yeah, I'm Mark McCain with S. Mark McCain RLA. I did look at, this is where, there it is. I did look at, this was the closest point right here. So that's what we looked at. I just did some measurements from the corner of the building going to the, as you can see, to the property line, to the 25-foot easement, to the fence, and to the building. This is the actual elevation of the building. In the back here, where that arrow is, that is 14 feet, I think 14 feet 1 inch. It does have the parapet wall, but the parapet wall, as you can see, is just on the ends. So right here, this is the 14 feet. That's what you'd be looking at. These trees would be 6 to 8 feet at time of planting at a growth rate of 18 inches a year, 1.5 feet per year, which is about what you're going to get for a white pine. You can see the chart up here. In 5 years, they should be somewhere between 14 to 15 feet. If you were a 6-foot person at the back of that house, looking that way, that's what you would see. So within 5 years, I don't think you're going to be able to see that building very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Mark. Well, we believe we've really improved the neighborhood in terms of lowering the intensity of use and adding the additional screening. The other thing that's significant is that this property was zoned in 2000. The first house that was built on Spyglass is 2002. I say that simply because the original people that moved there, and certainly everybody that's moved there since this property has been vacant, has been aware and on notice that this property has been zoned for commercial use. And that at some point in time, probably sooner rather than later, there would be a commercial use of the property. It's not like we're coming in after these people had been here first and we're adding something that was unexpected or would be a surprise to them. All the previous owners of the houses on Spyglass and Riviera certainly were aware of the zoning of the property, or should have been aware, and it's not like we're doing a zone change that's going to foist something where they had a different set of expectations in terms of how our property would be developed. On the contrary, if they checked out what had been approved and could be built since 2006, compared to what we're proposing and what you all approved in December, they would have to agree, I think, at least in a significant way, that we've really made an improvement in terms of lowering the noise, lowering the sounds of the trucks, the loading docks, and the dumpsters, much more so than what would otherwise take place. We're not we haven't satisfied everybody, but we think we've made a good faith effort, and we've done a good job in responding to concerns with a very proactive plan for your all's consideration. Be happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Mr. Sosky, you want to ask him a question?
Oh, the 20-foot, I think on Monday's workshop, there was some discussion about 21 or 22-foot height of the building.
Yeah, that's with the parapet walls on the sides here. On the back portion, in terms of what they're facing, is 14 feet.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Simpson?
Thank you.
Duke Brown? Well, we'll hear from the public now. Charlie, you want to call their name, or you just want to ask them to come up?
Well, I'm not sure which of these are for this application. I'm sure the addresses on Spyglass are, so I'll start with those. Linda Angel.
Hello, I'm Linda Angel, and I live at 100 Spyglass, the in-house that he pointed out there on the end. And we appreciate their follow-up and trying to become good community citizens and to support Cherry Blossom, and to hopefully our property values will not go down, but you know, with everything, we do consider that our property values will be affected by this. But what I'm asking for now is, you know, they've proposed 6 to 8 foot trees. As you see from the years of growth that it takes for it to get a certain height, the fence that they proposed is 6 foot, and so is the trees. So they would be basically flush. What I'd like to ask for is trees that are higher between, I would like to see 10-foot trees. I don't know, is it a cost thing? That's why they're proposing the 6 to 8 foot trees? I can't see why trees a little bit higher would not be sufficient and be brought into the neighborhood there, because it would help with the aesthetics of the neighborhood from our perspective as homeowners, and also from customers that come in. So that is my request, and we do appreciate them working with us and to become good community citizens, and we'd like to welcome them as well. But we all need to be on the same page, and that's my request, is to have higher trees put in initially based upon the growth per year. And as we know, some trees fail, and you know, we don't have that growth that they propose every year. That's probably in the perfect world. So that is my request for this, and we thank you for being here and listening to us. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Kim Fields.
I'm Kim Fields, and I live at 101 Spyglass. I appreciate everything they've done, and they've really been good and respond to emails and correspondence, and I'm very appreciative of it. And I think it's wonderful, the proposal that they have done pretty much. And the first proposal that the property was, I'm glad it didn't happen. But furthermore, I just bought in the neighborhood last year, and if that was going to be, I wouldn't have bought the neighborhood and went there. So I'm very glad and thankful that it didn't happen. I think, you know, the fence that we had mentioned about because of the sound. We thought that if it was more commercial, you know, metal or concrete or something would help more on the soundproofing. But, you know, if the wooded fence is what they want to do, you know, we can live with that, I think. But the trees, you know, he said, you know, in 5 years. Okay, that is great, but for 5 years, we don't want to look at that. So that is why we ask about trees being a little bit taller. And, you know, I mean, I'd send an email about 8 to 12 foot trees. You know, I don't see why, at least like Linda said, 10 foot, something that would be above. And then if they grow in a foot and a half in a year, and then that way they would be up to 14 foot, that we wouldn't be looking and seeing that. But, and I'm gonna go back to, I'm a realtor, and I had 102 Spyglass House has been on the market for over 6 months now, which I'd addressed and you all were aware of because I said it at the last meeting. And back in the fall when we had multiple people looking, they loved the house, would have bought it, but they said, we're not buying it because of what's going behind there. And it hurt the house. The house was appraised at $310,000. But just this past week, we did get an offer, and they've taken it at $275 because they're afraid if they keep waiting, the price keeps going down. So it has affected the value of that house. And it's going to be a domino effect of other houses that sell in the neighborhood within the next 3 months because they will compare that to the sale of it. But we're going to sell it, and it'll probably go for $275. But I think the trees, if they were up bigger and planted, and that way when people look over through there and stuff, the visual, that will be the buffer and not be as obvious, and it would look better. So I just would like to ask if they would, meet us halfway and come up to 10 feet of the trees. Come up a little bit bigger from the ground up and have a 10-foot tree, so then in a year, it's gonna be 11 and a half foot and start going. But we don't want to sit and wait 5 years to see that buffer, to see the screening of the trees, even though eventually it would happen, but that's a 5-year span. But that's the main thing, is if we could get a little bit on the trees. But I wanted to share about how it has affected the value of that house trying to sell it. And most homes in Cherry Blossom don't take that long to sell. So, but that's all I got to say.
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
a question?
Yes, he's got a question for you. Mr. Wiseman has a question for you.
You mentioned you thought the metal fence would stop sound better than a wooden fence, but it seems to me like it's the other way around. Ben, could you address that?
Well,
Just open a metal fence.
I'm just going by, when you have, along the roads, you'll see metal on roads. When you have houses over on the other side to buffer, like the roads, the traffic, they don't have wood. You'll see, right here in Georgetown, they've got the big tan metal fences going out.
You mean over around the bypass? There.
Yeah, by the bypass.
Well, you're looking for something like that.
Well, that's why I'm thinking something commercial, something that would be more of a buffer than what wood would be. But I mean, I'm glad that they're doing it around the parking lot. I think that's great, the fence to be a buffer around that. But
My other question is, when these houses were appraised, 300,000 or whatever, they knew this was going to be developed.
Yes,
So
and
why
it-
is this any different than what they expected when they appraised it in the first place?
well, the house was appraised. Yeah, it was appraised and it was under consideration. They knew that was commercial property.
Sure.
Okay, that wasn't the problem. The problem was people coming didn't want to buy that house and pay that because of what was going behind it. They didn't want to pay $300,000 for something, and then us not knowing how it was going to look and the layout, because we didn't know until the end of December and before we ever seen the first proposal about a tree line being planted or anything. So we were in the dark, and everybody would say, well, I've heard this is going to be there, and you think the worst of things. So, for 3 months, September, October, November, December, 4 months almost, we didn't know. We hadn't seen nothing to the end of December of the proposal. So we didn't know.
What could you imagine going in here that you anticipated that would be less objectionable than this? It sounds like this is as good as it's going to get on zoning the way it is.
Oh, I think it's much better, than what it was the first proposal. Yeah, it's great. Well, no one knew what was going to be going there. We knew it was commercial.
So you expected something like this, right?
Well, we knew it would be commercial, yeah, but we didn't know what it would be and how close it would be to the property line and stuff. And that it, if it was gonna be something 24 hours or what it was. But,
So this is about as good as it's gonna get, right?
it's what it sounds like.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I understand why you're objecting so much.
About the trees?
Well, about the plate, yeah, right. Because it's way past our standards already. What, 5 to 6, and we're going 6 to 8?
Yeah.
So it seems to me like they're taking the extra step here.
They have been, and we appreciate it, and they have been, they've been very good. But, you know, we are the neighbors, and we just express our concerns and our interests,
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Charlie.
Sandy Owens?
Well, I finally got a contract on my house, and I am thrilled, even though it's a lot less than what we were wanting. And I really like the proposal. I wish that we'd known that a little bit earlier, and I might have got a little bit more money. But I'm happy with the proposal. I won't be living there, you know, but I still live in Cherry Blossom, so it'll affect me too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Harold Coons?
Hi, I'm Harold Coates. I live at 110 Spyglass, and I'd like to ask about the garbage can where it's going to be a section that's right behind my house. And I don't know why it can't be taken over to the right-hand side of the parking lot. If you notice where the circle is, that's right behind my house. If they could go down this other corner, it'd be out of the way.
Then it's gonna be in behind somebody else's house.
No, it won't. No, on this corner. Let me point it.
You talking to the left or to the right?
It's talking
Let's go
lower.
right here.
Yeah.
Trucks come in, go around here, cause he was gonna come up here and go up here anyway. So he could go around and go over to here.
Isn't there houses on this other street over here though?
No, this will be the retention pond right here.
But I mean, on the other side of retention pond, there's houses.
No, yeah, they'll have all this room here
Yeah.
between them. See what I'm saying? I'd like to have that looked over. And how much distance is between our property line and they start their trees and stuff? Any idea?
We'll let the applicant answer that here in a second.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Are they allowed to put that dumpster on in that corner?
Didn't mean a minute of,
Next, Charlie.
I don't believe I have anybody else signed up for this application.
I think this gentleman here wanted to
I didn't
speak.
get a chance to sign in, but I'd like to speak, to be honest.
Did you take the oath when you had a chance?
I did know, but I'll just take it now.
Do you swear or affirm what you're about to say to be the truth, the best of your information and belief?
I do.
And your name, sir?
Neil Thompson, 108 Spyglass.
I was gonna say, the oath is a one-time deal. You lost out.
Could you pull up the picture of where the road is gonna connect over to Old Oxford or whatever? And I live at 108, and I appreciate, the first thing is you can see the proposed dumpster, and those neighbors didn't like it behind their house. Well, I don't want it behind my house either. That's where it got moved to. So I don't really, I understand it's their property. They have the right to build. So I'm fine with that. If they're building something there, it's their right. They own the property. But I don't understand why everything is going in on the neighborhood side. Like, can you explain a little bit about the basin, the water basin? What's it going to look like? Is it going to look terrible like the one behind Kentucky Bank that's on Connector Road? Is it going to look terrible like the one that's next to Steak and Shake? What's this going to look like? Especially the fact that it backs up to a neighborhood and there's kids and all that stuff. So if you could shed a little bit of light on what that basin is. Is it concrete, grass?
Right now, what's proposed is just simply a normal basin. It's about 8 feet deep. It'll have stone in the bottom of it. That's for water quality. It has to be in that particular spot because that's where it has to connect into the main storm sewer system. So that's why it is where it is. And there is another one on the original, on the full preliminary development plan. The way the watersheds are, there's another basin that's at the front of the site too, the front corner. So there's actually would be 2 basins on this property.
And then pine trees are around the edge of the basin, right, Mark?
That answer your question?
Okay. And so I think, they're talking about traffic and all that. I think this connector road is a terrible idea. If you drive over here now, I'll give you an example. Talk to the people that work at that Valvoline about how many cars cross over from Oxford to Cherry Blossom Drive so they can get home because Oxford Road gets so backed up. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to alleviate the traffic for Cherry Blossom. It's going to make it worse. Because if you try to make a left or right hand turn at Oxford Drive, when you come down there, you can't get out because the traffic, the stoplight's right there. The cars are already backed out. So if you want to make a right hand turn, you have to go across 3 lanes to make a left because the right lane goes up Cherry Blossom towards Toyota. The middle lane goes directly across to Walmart. The left lane is a turn lane, and it's impossible to get out of there. So that's going to be the worst possible. That's going to make the traffic 10 times worse for Cherry Blossom. It's not going to help anything. So I would really ask you to consider that connector because I really, really think it's a bad idea. I mean, the traffic is there. I remember Mark saying, he works right in that area. He knows Mr. Jones. I know you were the only person that voted against this in December. You know the problems on Connector Road. I like those imaginary buildings from 2006 because no one ever built them because no one was crazy enough to buy the property because of the traffic. And it is going to look better on the back of our house, but those imaginary buildings look a lot better to me than an actual building that's going to be going in. And to back on Mr. Wiseman, what you had said, the reason the problem with the house selling is, yes, you always knew it was commercial property, but once they started to sell their house, there were plans to actually physically build something there. So there were signs posted saying there was development meetings and stuff like that over the years. We bought our house 5 years ago. We knew something would get built there, but nothing was in the works. So, when you're, as a home buyer, and you're going in and know for a fact that something's going in there, that's going to make a big difference when you're buying as opposed to potential use, of the property.
Just a matter of time, though.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely a matter of time, 100%. But like I said, I would really ask you all to consider maybe talk a little bit more in detail about that road connecting the two because I think that you're looking for a huge headache. I mean, people cross through that Valvoline parking lot all day, every day, crossing over from Oxford because they don't want to wait in that line because they can't get out. And don't even think about making a left-hand turn off Oxford on the connector road. I mean, you're never going to get through. There's so many close calls there on a daily basis. How there hasn't been a fatality in that spot, I don't know. But I would really, really ask you to consider not doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak on this application? Yes, sir.
I did not raise my hand yet.
Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
And your name, sir?
John B. B-E-E. And I live at 117 Riviera Drive, which is, when you're looking at, well, not this one, but they had one up when they were looking at the trash compactor thing, that one. I live basically at the angle there between Spyglass and Riviera on the other side of the street. Originally in December, or so I thought, they were going to have trees all the way down and clear over past the basin there. If this is the new plan, are they now not going to have those there? Or at least to start with?
They still have to buffer that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have to go
Down to the end of what the phase 1 is, right? Yeah.
So there's an existing tree line there at the end, isn't there?
That's what I'm asking. Are they going to put the tree line in? Yeah, when is the question, not will they, but when will they?
Yeah, with this development of phase 1, they have to bring that down there even with the phase 1 development.
Okay, because it doesn't show on my copy nor that. And that was my question.
I got some little fuzzy lines on mine, so I'm assuming that's what that is.
Okay.
This
Well,
is
Again,
Buffer
mine
road.
didn't show it, so I just wanted
No, it's
clarification.
Squiggly's on mine.
Okay.
Let's let him.
I can tell you.
Yeah, he can probably answer that question pretty well.
There is an existing tree line and quite a bit of vegetation in that area. I think the note on the plan, on the landscape plan states that obviously we don't want to go in and tear anything down. We don't want to tear not any large trees down. Some of the shrubs, maybe so, but the note on the plan says that we would infill where needed to supplement that whole thing. So.
Well, in my opinion, those trees are pretty ragged looking to me. A lot of them are half dead and all sorts of other things. You can see right through them. This type of thing, if it was, again, clear down to the edge of the basin, is where I think it should be. And if they have to take all these old dead trees out, well, they're not all dead, but some of them are, then now's the time to do it. Get it all done at the same time and have it where that area all looks finished and not half finished. And again, that area, I don't know, it's just pretty bad with what's there now. Nothing matches, of course. And
I see here on the
basically what I
notes, it
have.
says at the end of 1 year, which is their warranty on their trees,
Sure.
any dead tree has to be replaced. So I would think that would include any tree that's already there, right, Joe?
Yeah, but what are they gonna do? Go
Well,
through, maybe take down
We
one?
have to identify dead trees, you know, at the time that they're doing their planting.
Okay.
Again.
A year later and point out a dead tree.
Okay.
So,
A matter of opinion, what's dead and what isn't. You can look at it, and I could look at it, and I think it's dead. You may think, oh, it's a good looking tree. So,
That's true.
you know, again, be consistent, do it now so that as they grow, they all grow, not just down to the half, to that property, which appears to me, it's about half of the gentleman's property it lives across the street from. Half of it's gonna have trees, the other half down to my house, or down to Riviera, doesn't look like it's gonna have anything. And then coming down Riviera, nothing, no trees, no nothing, except a big hole. And I think that needs to be done at the same time they're doing that whole area to make it finished and look right. And that's, again, my opinion.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Could I speak? I haven't signed up either. I just want to add something to his tree issue.
Folks, if anybody else wants to speak, please stand now and get sworn in so we don't have to continue to
Well,
keep
it's not
doing
gonna
this.
take but a minute.
You still have to be sworn in.
Okay.
Do you swear affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes,
And your name, please?
Linda Page.
P-A-I-G-E.
P-A-G-E. I live on Ikebana, and I'm on the landscape committee for Cherry Blossom Villas. And we've been looking at the tree line issue because we've had several trees back behind the townhomes that are there on Riviera that have started, one fell over, and several look like they're getting ready to fall over. And we're in the process of getting an arborist to come out there and walk the property line with us to identify what trees really are dead, dying, need to be taken out. And what the gentleman before said is correct. Most of those trees are sick or dead, the roots are exposed, and they're going to be a hazard within a very short period of time, the next year or two. And they're all on that side of the property line, so we can't address the trees. They belong to the other side of the property line. So we feel that it might behoove them to get with us for this arborist report to see what trees need to come down, because I agree with him, it's gonna be a very difficult thing for him if they leave those trees up there.
That's a good comment. I think there's nothing better when the community can come together with a business and make things work.
Yes.
I think that works for everybody, so if the community could come together with Planet Fitness and talk a little bit more about Riviera, maybe this whole problem can get taken care of, so.
Right, and
Thank you.
since we are gonna get the arborist, it would be a good opportunity for us to work with them to identify what needs to come out.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you answer any questions about the trees along Riviera?
Is anybody else going to speak, and I can address what's been raised so far, Mr. Chairman? Do you want to have somebody else that can address everything?
Is anybody else gonna have any,
I have one comment.
one more comment, Mr.
Okay.
Simpson?
I need to probably address this. I just want to make sure that it's.
Come back up to the microphone, because she can't hear you on the tape if you don't speak into the microphone.
I just want to make sure that it's written in the proposal, it can be documented, that they will maintain the barrier between the landscaping, they will maintain that. And also that they maintain the fence, should, because over the years, those things, the fences start to look bad, deteriorate, maybe get termites, whatever, or they whelp and they warp, the boards do. I just want to make sure that that is somewhere in there, that it is, they are to maintenance that, and that is to be taken care of by them, and also the landscaping in between.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry.
Well, she's going off, ain't she?
It's always text.
Mr. Simpson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. With respect to the trees on Riviera, this area up in there, the reason we put the note on there is a significant number of trees. Obviously, if there's dead trees, they'll have to be removed. Most of the time, those trees are much taller than 8 feet. So most people want to keep the trees that are taller than 8 feet. And our task would be to work with Joe's office. We can certainly work with the neighbors, assess the value of those trees and their quality, if you will, so that the supplementation that we add will actually make that area more screened than this, because this is a significant tree stand area already. So we weren't trying to bypass anything. We just didn't want to go in there and wipe out all those trees, because it provides a pretty good screening right now. We wanted to enhance it. That's why the note's on the plan. So just so we're clear about that. Obviously, with respect to the fence, this is a multi-million-dollar investment. You can take a look at Planet Fitness's properties all over the United States. They're all very well maintained. They have to keep customers coming in. Anything that we put on this plan that's relative to this fence will certainly be maintained. That's in our best interest to maintain it. We want to make it attractive. We want the neighbors to come over and become members of Planet Fitness. It's an additional incentive, obviously. This area certainly is their responsibility to maintain the green space and make it attractive. People want to go and visit places that are well maintained. And you're not going to spend $20 million and start letting it go shabby. Neighbors have a complaint. They've got my number. We can give them, once the construction is completed, they can, if anything goes on to construction, they can call me. We'll respond to it. I think they have said that we have been proactive in reaching out to them to meet them more than halfway with respect to their concerns. We're putting in a $16,000 fence that we don't have to put in, 6 feet tall, to screen all of the parking areas so they can't see the cars. It would double the cost to make the trees 10 feet. It would double our cost for that. We're going over and above the minimum, a substantial amount. And they're looking at a 14-foot segment of the building in a very limited area compared to what they were looking at before, when you had buildings all up and down through here. I would say it's reasonably foreseeable and to be expected that you may see some portion of a building that's zoned commercial before you bought your property. And we've attempted to meet their concerns, I think, in a very responsible manner, with the increase in the height of the trees and the cost of the fence to screen the parking area. They don't have to see it. So we believe that we've done a pretty good job of addressing their concerns in light of property's been vacant. Expect to be commercial. I think this is the lowest intensity use you could possibly have as a neighborhood, and they recognize that. So I think we clearly have demonstrated good faith, more than good faith, to warrant the community's support. But it doesn't end here. We still have other work to do. You know, we got to come back and work with them on this, which we will do. We want to have a good relationship. But at some point, we have to say, you know, we made a substantial contribution in terms of screening and buffering, and we can't give everything that you asked for. We came pretty close, and we think it's worthy of approval. We ask that you do so.
There was one question about the dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, the dumpster, you're not going to, you know, between the dumpster, where the dumpster is located, which is right here, I think the closest house is maybe 100 and some feet away. You got double row of 6 to 8 foot tall pine trees, an existing fence back here, and a substantial tree line, and then a 6 foot fence in front of the dumpster, and then the dumpster is contained in a whole additional separate unit. I mean, there's not serving food or anything. You're going to have, you know, maybe come in, what, James, once a week? Yeah, once a week. Once a week, you know, for 5 minutes. I mean, you're not even, they can't see the dumpster at any point back here. So it's got to be somewhere within a relatively close proximity of the building. And I don't see how that's going to be a problem. You cannot see the dumpster from anybody's house back here. Even if we didn't have the trees or anything else, you couldn't see it, because it's all going to be self-contained and fenced. So, any other questions that we can respond to? We want to.
Anyone else?
Yeah, can you address real quick? There was a traffic study done back in December,
Right.
To appease the gentleman's concern.
Well,
about
you know, we
traffic.
litigated that traffic issue. We're in favor of the signal. We want the signal. You heard the District 7 folks come in here and say that the signal at up toward, or I guess that would be west, it's too close for us to have a signal. We have the strongest interest in getting a signal, and we're going to keep pushing for the signal. We got a $20 million investment. We want a signal, or whatever else we can do to move traffic, because you're having vacant property. This, you know, in the heart of the city, you want to make it useful, and so we have more of an interest than anyone to make sure that we get cars into the development. We're going to keep pushing. There's some other things. We met with the mayor on this about future traffic improvements elsewhere in the county that are near here that feed into this development. We're going to be a vital part of getting this connector road, Blossom Park Drive, mitigated as much as we can, because we have a bigger stake in it financially than anybody.
Anyone else? The trees along Riviera, would Planet Fitness agree to put pines along that fence down through phase 1 along Riviera?
Well, we were gonna supplement. There's a lot of trees up there, and some of them are healthy. Now, some of them are dead and they're non-functional and they don't provide any screening. They need to come out. My suggestion would, let's deal with the note, keep the healthy trees, and supplement.
Would they be the 6 to 8 foot pines?
Yeah, 6 to
also?
8 foot minimum, absolutely.
What, the pines?
Pine trees,
Okay.
yes, sir. Double row.
Yeah.
Where necessary, where you don't have to cut down a healthy big
Yeah, I
tree.
don't see any healthy trees cut down myself.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
Okay.
This it. Come on back up.
I was Googling here, he said that the cost of the trees were double. I was Googling, and they are not double. When you go from a 6 to a 6-foot tree to an 8 to a 9-foot tree, or even 10, it's not double. So I'm not sure where they're comparing the cost, but I think if they look at getting quantity, and if they, they're a pretty good sized company, they should be able to get a good value, and should be able to increase the size of the trees. That would be a warm welcome to us, and we would definitely just appreciate the opportunity for them to consider that. It would make us a good community neighbor with them as well. So we ask that they consider raising the size of the trees. Thank you all.
I appreciate that she did a quick Google. James Matthews is here. They build these places all over the country. To pay for the installation, it would be double the cost to go up to a 10-foot tree. So we think that our buffer is very effective with the fence, the 16,000 that we don't have to put in.
Any other comments, questions? If there's no more comments or questions, we'll take a vote, get a motion. Move forward. Anyone want to make a motion? Mr. Simpson, y'all in agreement with all the terms and conditions?
Yes, yes.
One thing I wouldn't mind clarifying right now is, as it stands right now, the tree line would be, that tree buffer would be 6 to 8 feet, is that correct? It'd be a range from 6 to 8 feet?
Be 6 to 8 foot tall pine trees, double row, staggered.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Be nice if they could all be 8 feet.
You looking for a motion?
Yes, sir, I'm waiting for a motion.
Well, I move that we approve this with the 8 conditions recommended.
A motion by Mr. Wiseman to approve. Can I get a second?
I'd second it.
A second by Mr. Smith.
I would make a comment. I think.
Yes, sir.
I think this is, like you say, is one of the probably lesser uses of a commercial area. Going to affect the residents much less than anything else might, especially if it was a restaurant bar. And I think they've gone at least a little bit of the extra mile to try to address things with the community. I'm still concerned about the traffic in that area, but it's not your fault. We're gonna have to continue to work with the state, try to figure out a way to solve that problem. Not gonna be easy.
I will say this, I think one of the best things we've ever done since I've been on this commission is come up with a 2-year sunset clause, because we won't have these issues. This plan here's been sitting here since 2000.
I agree, Ted.
It would have to come back. With this plan here, they would have to come back and get the rezoning and do everything over again. So the best thing we've ever done is have this 2-year sunset clause put in motion. So, we have a motion by Mr. Wiseman, second by Mr. Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes no, and y'all know why I vote no. I don't think we need the traffic, so I think you got a great plan. I wish y'all the best. So, thank you.
Bruce? Need a
You have signed
signature?
papers. Our next application on the agenda is PSP 2018-11, Oxford Place LLC. The chair will have to recuse himself, so Mr. Solsky will take over on this one.
Yes, he does. Go ahead, Matthew.
All right.
Oh, shh, please.
All right. Joe?
As you mentioned,
Joe?
this is
Excuse
a.
me, Matt.
Oh yeah.
Joe, excuse me just real quick.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I think they asked me to hold. This is a preliminary subdivision plat application to create a lot in a commercial area that is 0.735 acres in size. It's in Falls Creek development, and the zoning of the property is B4, and it is a planned unit development. This is an aerial photo of the area. As you can see, we've got Champion Way here. We've got US 25 here. This is Falls Creek Drive along through here. And then this is the gas station that was built just a couple of years ago. And then just to the north of it is the proposed subdivision. This is related to the development plan that we heard last month at this same location. They're just trying to create a commercial lot so that they can sell the property and begin construction. Looking at the zoning, as I mentioned, this is in the B4 zoning district. This is the lot that was created for the gas station, and this would just be to the north. This is the preliminary plat that was submitted for review. Once again, we've got Falls Creek Drive here. We've got US 25 here. The applicant is proposing an access road here, part of which is already built. If you've been out there, I think there's the little stub street that runs along the east side of the gas station, and they're proposing to continue that up north to provide access to what is being called Lot 3. Just as a quick note on this, they are showing all the appropriate setbacks. There's no issues with that. There are, I guess, there's three things that I just wanted to point out with this. The first being the pedestrian circulation. I've included here. This is a cross section from the preliminary plat for what that access road will look like. There is no pedestrian circulation included in that cross section there. I included down here to the bottom. This was the cross section for that same road when the gas station was approved, actually from their final development plan. If they wanted to, on their final plat or final plan, to have a cross section similar to this, I don't think that would be a problem. I just wanted to point out that this one did contain a separate easement for the sidewalk to be included as part of that plan, just to provide a pedestrian circulation. And so I think that's a good idea to continue at least something similar to that as we extend north. The other thing, and I think the applicants are in agreement on this, but the preliminary plat didn't address the concerns with Falls Creek Drive. As we briefly mentioned last month, Falls Creek Drive currently exists as an access easement that was created on a couple of plats, specifically providing access for this lot here, which is I believe the Heritage Apartments, and then this lot here, which is the gas station. And by the language on those plats that created that access easement, none of the other tracts or parcels in all of Falls Creek really have the right to use that access easement. So since this is intended to be a public street, eventually to be dedicated to the city, it is highly appropriate for this to be platted as right-of-way so that it can be free for use by all users. and sort of move it on that path towards dedication. That's something that could be done with this plat. It would just need to be, shown as such and have a cross section provided for that road as well. The last one, and this is probably the area where I imagine we'll probably spend the bulk of the discussion on this application, does deal with the access road, the stub road that's currently on the east side of the gas station. As I've laid out here, typically in I would say all of our developments since I've been with the Planning Commission, access roads to new lots have to be constructed before we record final plats. And so typically with the way that it goes is that we have the preliminary subdivision plat approved by the Planning Commission. Following that, infrastructure and roads are completed, and then finally the plat is recorded. This ensures that anyone purchasing the property, has access to the property. It ensures that utilities are in place so that there's no issues after the sale of the property. I do know that the applicant has been working to come up with an agreement between the two private owners in this proposed or in this potential transaction to come up with a way or an alternate path to sort of get that access road constructed. I'll leave that up to them to describe it. I just wanted to make clear, this is the way that our regulations say that subdivisions like this occur. So my findings on this are that, yes, the preliminary plat does meet our requirements for preliminary approval. I did note that there are some things that I think need to be either addressed before we get to the plat recording or, some issues that need to be straightened out at this meeting also. One of those being number 2 here, that Falls Creek Drive needs to be platted as right-of-way, likely with this plat or very, very soon. And then the lot currently doesn't have road, water, sewer, or electric connections on it, and those are issues that need to be dealt with before the plat's recorded as well. I am recommending approval of the preliminary. That says development plan, but it should say subdivision plat. I'm recommending approval of it. I believe there were 12. Yeah, there's 12 conditions in your staff report for it. The first being that the access road be constructed prior to the recording of the final subdivision plat. Obviously, if you approve the applicant for some sort of alternate path, that condition may need to be changed. The final subdivision plat should state how the access road will be maintained, since there will be multiple users or multiple lots that have access from that, and it is, to my knowledge, not a road that's intended to be taken over by the city. So we will need some sort of maintenance plan in place. Falls Creek Drive should be platted as right-of-way prior to the recording or on this final subdivision plat. And we also need some way for there to be pedestrian circulation as part of this plat as well. And that's all that I have.
Any questions for Matthew? Thanks, Matt. The applicant?
Private matter first.
Better than the one I've got on anyway.
Thanks. For the record, Bruce Langford here for the applicant, Oxford Place. I'm with Doug and Joey Smith. This is Chris Reich. He's the Domino's pizza man. And this is Pat Darnell, the engineer. At the workshop the other day, it was discussed and agreed, I think, that I should, on behalf of the applicants, come up with some sort of a proposal, present it to Charlie, that would arrange the ability to go ahead and record the final development plan so that we could close on this lot and have protection and insurance that the private roadway and the entrance and all the utilities would be constructed as agreed. And so I did make a proposal. Charlie has it. You have a copy, Charlie?
Actually, I just forwarded it. I didn't print it. And yes, Ben printed it. Excellent.
Charlie has a copy of the proposal.
And I think Charlie is in agreement with it. You want to speak to that?
Sure. What we talked about at workshop was that being private, it didn't follow the same procedure as otherwise, but we wanted to make sure that it was secured, the cost of putting in the access road as well as utilities to serve it. We talked about at the time escrowing funds, setting aside, letting us hold, all kinds of things. We weren't particularly comfortable holding proceeds of their closing. It occurred during probably the discussion that Bruce and I had the following day, that the money did need to come out of the closing. We didn't want something, that came somewhere else. Needed to come out of the closing, and then it came up, why doesn't Bruce take it? Number one, show it on the closing statement. Number two, get the agreement of the Smiths, the LLC, Domino's. It is taken at the closing and then held in Bruce's escrow account, for which we'll have basically an escrow agreement that tells him how long to hold it and when he can release it and for what. As I understand it, we have the agreement of the developers, we have the agreement of Domino's, we have Bruce's agreement. So at the closing, that money will be withheld. Oh, and it'll be 125% of whatever the estimated cost is. And then they will complete that. That will satisfy the escrow agreement. The money will be released then to pay what needs to be paid at that point. So yes, I am satisfied. I sent a copy of this to Ben. I think I copied Joe too. Well, maybe Matt too, I'm not sure. Anyway, I think that covers our concerns. It gets this thing built, and I think that takes care of what we discussed at workshop. Is that correct, Bruce?
You did good.
Thank you.
Anybody, any questions on that? With respect to the preliminary development plan, those other issues and the other comments that Matt had, we're okay, right, Joe? Okay, Doug? We're okay with that, and we accept it. It's okay. Good to go.
Thank you. Any questions for Bruce?
I did have one question. This street, is there any chance that this is gonna continue on around in the future? I mean, I know that this is a private drive, but is this private drive gonna make a loop?
You swear affirm?
I do. We have no idea at this
State your
point.
name.
I'm Joey Smith for the record. We have no idea at this point who might come in and want what. So it could continue on, it may not. It's likely that it would, because there's a corner lot, an outlot on the corner, that it would probably, we'd love to see a McDonald's or a CVS or something like that, and they'd have to have access. But it could be a mini Myers grocery store with something else on the corner that ties it in that would not need a road. We just don't know yet.
But would they be best served by this private drive? I mean, is this drive gonna be sufficient to handle?
It'll be built to city standards, yeah.
And of course, anything that comes in and shows additional access to it, that plat's, will be beefed up to do whatever else, and then the initial standards will be sufficient.
Any other questions? Okay, anybody else here in favor or against this applicant? All right, I need any further discussion? If not, I need some.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langford.
I make a motion to approve PSP 2018-11.
Motion by Ms. Mizell.
Do we need to change the conditions of approval based on what you have in your hands there, Charlie?
You might add recommendation number 13, possibly make that.
Yeah, that's what I was looking. Oh, well, I thought there was one already up in here though that we needed.
Number one, if you're going to approve.
Number one.
Yes, yeah, number one would be stricken and replaced with the escrowing of 125% pursuant to the approved escrow agreement that you all approved, if you will, as part of this. And I'll figure out how to write that in real quick. But that'll be number one.
With what Charlie said.
So I've got a motion by Mrs. Mizell. Did I hear a second?
I'll second.
Oh, a second by Johnny. Beat you to it. So I've got a second by Johnny. Mr. Cannon, I should say. We can do an all in favor, right? We don't need to do a roll call. So all in favor of application PSP 2018-11, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Mr. Cannon. Okay, next application, well, here can Mr. Jones.
Think you can have that built in about 3 months? We need some pizza places up that way.
Mr. Chair, well, actually, Mr. Acting Chair, for that moment, if we could make this actually part of the motion.
Regina did. She said inclusive of what you said.
Excellent.
Yep,
Thank
she
you.
did. Thank you.
That way, the minutes will reflect that too. Thank you.
Our next application is ZMA 2018-12 Griffith Property rezoning request from R2 medium density residential to P1 professional office located at 100 Markham Drive. This is a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing.
All right. Like you said, the applicant, Trina Griffith, is looking to change the zone from R2 medium density residential to P1 professional office at 100 Markham Drive. It's about 0.36 acres. So this is what we're looking at. You can see the site there. The surrounding zones are B2 highway commercial to the north, west, and south, and to the east right there is R2 medium density residential. For a zone change to occur, one of the following 3 findings need to occur. I'm gonna just quickly go through these for you guys. For part 1, which essentially just says that the zoning map amendment needs to be in compliance or in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Our future land use map on the adopted comprehensive plan shows this parcel as urban residential, which is the current use. So therefore part 1 would not apply. So we need to look at subsection A. Subsection A just says that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and that the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. The current use right now is residential or a single family home. So it's appropriate for the existing zone, which is R2, so subsection A would not apply. So now we would look at subsection B, which says that there have been major changes of economic, physical, or social nature within the area since the adopted comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016. When that or 2017, I apologize. And when that occurred, all these B2 commercial uses and then the existing residential uses were there. The P1 zone is intended to act as a transitional buffer between commercial and residential uses, but the future land use map did not find that that transitional buffer was necessary in 2017. So I don't know why in the last year it would suddenly become necessary. In addition, a professional office is a conditional use within the R2 zone, so the proposed use could be conducted in the current zone pending approval from the Board of Adjustment. So I would say therefore subsection B does not apply. And then we can just briefly go through the concept plan. The way that they're showing it, they are meeting our minimum parking requirements. The professional office is proposed to be utilizing the existing single-family residential home. There is an issue when you're looking at the landscaping. We require a 15-foot landscape buffer between professional office and residential zones. So this eastern boundary right here, they would have to show, and they are showing, a 6-foot privacy fence instead of that 15-foot landscape buffer area with trees. In addition, they are going to be creating 2 non-conforming uses. They will not meet our setback requirements for the P1 zone. It's 12 feet for side yard setback, and they have 11 foot right there and right there. So they would not be meeting that requirement. And the existing use of a residential home is a conditional use within the P1 zone. It's not a permissible use. So therefore, we would be creating 2 non-conforming uses, but they would essentially just be grandfathered in, I guess is how you would say that. So we wouldn't require any action for that, but we would be creating 2 non-conforming uses with the zone change with the current use. And so with that, I am recommending denial of the zoning map amendment, but if the board does choose to approve it, I have the one following condition that they would just be required to meet our zoning ordinance and separates.
Any questions for Colin? Nope. Thanks. The applicant?
Good evening. I'll try to make it quick so we can all get out of here. So, yes, we could, my client could, my name is Kurt Hasselbach with Thoroughbred Engineering. And yet my client is applying for the zone change. If I could get it back to the, yeah. Yes. How do I, yeah, there you go. I got you now. So my client is applying for the P1 for several reasons. First thing is the definition of a comprehensive plan is to include, but not limited to, everything reasonable. It's not going to include everything. That's the reason why, you know, every aspect is not going to be considered in a comprehensive plan, nearly or completely in the definition of comprehensive plan. So I don't think that when they did this whole comprehensive plan, did they, well, let's look at 100 Markham. They didn't take that in conclusion. As you can see, everything else is R2. And like Michaela did say, P1 is the epitome of a buffer. One other beneficial of doing this, of turning it into P1, we would put that 6-foot fence right there. Imagine all that traffic that comes in through there with those headlights. It's going to be very hard to resell that. And I know we do have a conditional, but any realtor will say most home buyers or land owners or developers, they don't want the hassle. It just adds value to it. It's going to make it easier to sell, and it's going to open up the market for that piece of property. And if you see this little portion right here, there's another little eyesore with the apparently the city of Georgetown doesn't own it. We don't know who truly owns it, but anyway, it's an eyesore nevertheless. And that's another thing that's detrimental to the value of that property. By changing it into P1.
And that's the gas company pump station.
Correct. Not the gas station that everybody, when I say gas.
No, gas company.
Yeah, gas company.
Columbia Gas.
Columbia Gas. So that's another eyesore right there. And like I was saying, as traffic comes in through there, my client, Trina Griffith, would testify to and comment that headlights come through there constantly. But turning it into P1, it makes it easier to sell. It's more viable. What could happen is that lot could be vacant. No one ever buys it. It becomes a grounds for criminal activity. People will destroy it. It's going to be an eyesore, and then it's going to be detrimental to the rest of the subdivision. But what we're proposing would, by putting that privacy fence, it does the epitome of P1, provide a buffer to the rest of, and would be better maintained. And like Michaela said, some of the non-conforming items could be grandfathered in. And it does conform. It enhances the comprehensive plan. It's not detrimental to it. If there's any other questions?
Any questions for the applicant?
One other thing I'd like to add too real quick is, my client's put a lot of investment and time into this, and she doesn't have a lot of money, so this will add the value into it. I don't know how much credence that gives, but she's put a lot of effort and consideration to doing this. So if you could take that in consideration, it'd be greatly appreciated as well. Thank you.
Before you sit down.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
I guess my question is, could you not achieve the same thing just going through the Board of Adjustments?
Yeah.
Using a conditional use permit?
Well, that's what I was saying. It's just like, in real estate, especially nowadays, people don't, I know, it's not that big of a hassle. But when you're trying to sell something, and maybe Mark can kind of testify to this too, is that it just makes it easier. That's one less process you have to do. And then you're also selling it to the potential buyer. You don't have to go through that. And, you know, when people say Board of Adjustments, they cringe. They're like, well, I got to go through this hassle and that hassle. And when you're potentially buying something, the smoother, the easier, the better. And again, it opens up your market quite a bit right off the bat. And so that is part of the why we're requesting for the zone change. And again, we're not being detrimental to the comprehensive plan, we're just enhancing it. It's not like we're planning on putting a fitness center that has lights all up and everything else. We're not planning on putting a bar, you know, we're not asking, you know, for B2. There's no drive-through, there's no food. It's gonna be a dentist's office or, you know, an office, just like what's adjacent across the street. So it's not like it's out of the ordinary and stuck in, you know, on an island, P1 with, you know, R2 all around it. So it does conform. It does enhance it. It doesn't, it's not detrimental and it's not contradicting it in any way.
Did you say what kind of office it would be, or?
Well, there's several. It could be a dental it could be dental use, it could be professional use, it could be, you know, real estate. Who knows? You know.
So that main change would be taking what I guess is part of yard now and make it a parking lot.
Right.
That's the 6, 7 places to park.
Right. For the square footage, it's the parking space is based on the square footage, and that's what we're getting on that. And like I said, it would enhance the neighborhood. You'd have you know, some landscaping, some additional landscaping. You have a barrier wall. It would also block for the adjoining neighbor right there. Now they wouldn't have lights coming through because there would be a complete fence right there. So again, we're not being detrimental. We're enhancing the comprehensive plan.
I think you could do all the same things you're talking about going through Board of Adjustments though, rather than trying to, if you ask for, if we start changing zoning on anything that's currently residential to professional office, if we grant this one, then 55
but this
more
is
people might
different.
come in here
But
and
this
want to get the
is the
same
reason why
thing.
this one's different is because, you know, B2 is all around it, and this is cutting it off. I mean, this, all along 25 is, you know, B2.
50 other people in the county can argue the same thing though.
Well, yeah.
And they're sitting in the same predicament.
But again, but it's adding viability to the property, and it's not detrimental. It's not being detrimental, and it's on a case-by-case basis.
Any more questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Would you like to speak? Anyone else like to speak on this application? If there's no more public comment, we're going to close the public hearing now. The public hearing is closed now. Discussion from the commission. Any more discussion? If there's no other discussion, we'll take a motion.
Well, to get things moving, I'll move that we approve the application.
Motion by Mr. Wiseman for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Moran. It is a public hearing, so we do have to do a roll call vote. A yes vote is for approval. Mr. Wiseman?
Yes.
Mr. Solsky?
No.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Nope.
Ms. Mizell?
No.
Chair votes no. So that's a tie. So for failure of approval, the motion
Forwarded without a recommendation.
Yeah, forwarded without a recommendation, so it has to go to the Georgetown Fiscal Court,
Yeah.
Georgetown City.
Yeah, it would go there either way, but this way it goes without a recommendation.
Yeah, it goes to Georgetown City Council without a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Board. Does that make sense? Does he have to sign any papers, Charlie? Or do anything?
Without recommendation.
Well, it's without a recommendation, so it's not going with our conditions. Yeah, that's, I guess that's part of the record, because that's what staff recommended. But there aren't any imposed or anything for him to agree to, because you all didn't approve it with those conditions.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
But what if Charles was here? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, he's not here, so we can't.
If he was.
Yep, we don't know what he would
Yeah,
vote.
if he was here, yeah, we'd have a yes or a no vote, so.
Right.
He would vote with that.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, sir.
Charlie Mifflin's our new.
Oh, Charlie is? Charlie Mifflin. Charlie Mifflin. Joe, let's swap this up a little bit. Go ahead and do the Bluegrass RV, so Bruce can go.
We added all those
And opens space during the public
So
hearing.
we're gonna go ahead and do the Bluegrass RV letter now, and, we'll let Mr. Langford speak on behalf of Bluegrass RV here over this letter.
At the February 8th meeting, the Planning Commission had conditions of approval on the application that was pending for Bluegrass RV, and the 9th one was that no RVs will be brought on the lot until the certificate of occupancy is issued after construction is complete. And I have written a letter to the Planning Commission, addressed it to Rob Jones. I think he's transmitted it to you. Does everybody have a copy?
Yes, sir.
Basically, I'm saying that Bluegrass RVs is committed to working with the Planning Commission. They want to abide by the regulations. They're going to do everything they have to do. They would like permission to leave the RVs on the lot that are there now. They bring no more on. They're going to gradually be removing those that are there now, but that we be allowed to proceed with the development plan approval, construction, go to work on the site, and get the property improved as they plan to do it. So it's a very simple request. Can we leave them there while we're building? They're fenced in right now. They'll bring no more on. They're gonna do everything they have to do. They're gonna make that place look good, meet all the requirements and regulations. So that's what my letter says. I would make that a copy of this meeting and ask that you give us permission to do this. Is that it, Rob?
Yes, sir. Mr. Langford caught me on the street, and we sat and talked for about an hour about this, and he said he'd like to send a letter. I said, okay, we'll bring it back up, see what everybody thinks, because it's not my decision, it's everybody on this board's decision. So we sat and talked, and as we was talking, we thought there's probably maybe like 40 RVs on the lot.
Back behind the trip, back.
Yes,
way in the back.
they have went in there and put up a nice chain link fence all the way around all of them. And I think they had a few of them get broke into by the kids back there, which is gonna happen. But since then, Mr. Langford, I think they've moved in quite a few more.
Since you and I talked?
Since you and I've talked. There's probably 80 or 90 RVs out there. There is a bunch.
Really, that can't,
Joe went out today and looked, and he agrees with me. There's at least 80 RVs in that lot now. And that really surprised me.
yeah, well, now that would surprise me because got it real
I actually
firm.
seen a truck coming out one day. I didn't know if he took one in or what, but it was a.
They
it was
had
a
been
big,
moving them out.
It was a big, but he didn't have one hooked to him to take it out. He was coming out of the lot with empty, but it was a big truck that would pull one of those trail, a dually truck that would pull one of those.
You think
RVs,
they've
but-
taken them in since you and I talked?
Yes, sir, I do. I hate to say that,
That-
because
that-
I know you're trying to
How many were they
represent.
supposed to have there, Rob?
Well, when we talked, we thought there was probably 40 or so.
I don't know how many were on the lot. I didn't
Yeah.
count them. They didn't give me
Yeah.
a number. But we discussed 40.
And that, we
Approximately.
was just guessing, neither one of us had been up there, but there's more now, just.
What if I can get affirmation that they have not moved any more in there?
You wouldn't believe it? You want me to go back there and count them, bro? I can do it.
Well, we sent Joe went
Joe
up there
will.
today,
Yeah,
and he tried to.
There's quite a few back there, and I saw.
They got 3 rows.
Google image from year ago yesterday, if you look at Google Earth, the image comes up from April 11, 2017, and I counted them, there were 70 there. And there was one long row, and then there was some in the back.
Did you say 2017 or 2018?
17.
2017, a year ago.
A year ago.
Looked like there were 3 rows of them, but we can't get back there to.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying they haven't brought them in in the past year, I'm not saying that.
Right.
But what you're telling is, you think they've taken
I
some
think
in
they
since
have.
you and I talked.
I mean, I can't confirm that, but I think they have. Yes, sir.
Let me have the opportunity to see if I can verify that they have not done that. And if I do verify that, if the number that's there now is been stagnant, the same number they had for a while, except moving them out, can we go forward?
Can you get Joe or Ben access to go back there and
Yes,
count?
yes, I can.
I'd like you guys to go back and count. If we're gonna do this and approve it, I want you guys to know what was in there today or tomorrow, let's say. And then I want maybe a check in a month or two.
Well,
and if there's-
we can count them and we'll have a number.
Yeah. Police department ain't gonna let you use their $18,000 drone for the record.
Yes, I can get permission from Shirley, yes.
Well, I was discussing this with Charlie before the meeting started, and I did discuss it with you, I don't know why, but, because you probably know just as much as Charlie does when it comes to this, but with it being a vacant property, and they went in there and set this up as a commercial use without making any improvements, I think they're out of compliance. Does that sound right?
Well, that's kind of a gray area. They haven't constructed any improvements.
Well, I
It
think
is-
they did when they put the fence up, though. I would argue that point. I think they did when they put the fence up.
Except that I asked Joe, said to me he had no
We
concern
about had
about
to do
the
that in
fence.
order to protect it.
That's not something you
Protect
would-
the investment.
Required, but, I can see both sides, but a fence, I wouldn't consider a fence necessarily an improvement, but, we have interpreted in the past that if you store vehicles on an unimproved lot, you need to get a conditional use permit. And I think they did try to get a conditional use permit and were turned down.
About board
Last year.
adjustments.
Yeah, board adjustment.
I did that, didn't I? But I can't.
I can't remember.
I think so. I think you tried, Bruce, and I think you got turned down.
Is that
Oh,
what
that-
went to court?
No, just
No.
conditional use
Oh,
permit.
okay.
No, I think that did go, I think that was a Board of Adjustment.
But that's how we've interpreted that, an unimproved site, even if it's zone commercial, if you're gonna use it for storage, you gotta get a conditional use permit for
Yeah.
temporary storage.
I don't
You
think
remember
anybody
this?
here is that opposed to them having a few RVs on the lot, as long as all they're gonna do is take them off the lot, not add any more to them.
Yes, that's it.
If they're gonna take advantage of us and can continue to bring them in, then
Listen, if I thought that was gonna happen, I wouldn't be here tonight. I wouldn't speak for them, I wouldn't do that. They were out in front, on the front part of the lot, they moved them to the back, they're behind the fence. They're not supposed to bring any more in, they're gonna take them out. Gradually, they'll be taking them out while we're constructing.
let's get a firm count on what's there, and we'll go back a month from now, and hopefully it's gonna be less.
Yeah, but how do we police it?
Oh,
You know?
I mean, can we make a motion tonight to go on and do this, or do we need to know what's there?
Oh, yeah, we can make a motion to go on and do this, but I just wonder how we police it, you know?
I can
discussed
get
that with
Ben
you.
permission if he wants to go out there anytime, take a look.
Yeah, anybody can go out and get a count. make
At
sure.
the very least, yeah, they can get a count tomorrow. You can set whatever that is as the limit, and then just, I know Ben's got, nothing else to do, go out there periodically, but check it.
You go back
Because
a
it
month.
does seem like they've added from time to
They
time.
go back a month from now and it's more,
Then, you all would take a vote next
That's
month
right.
if that happens.
then
From the roadway, as I look at it, it seems all the same, like it hadn't changed.
Yeah, it's a,
They told me they were taking some out. I really can't tell that, but
they may have moved some around, but I could tell, I look up there every time I go by, because it's a little pet peeve
It's a
of mine
sore
by now.
spot, yeah.
So, I can tell there's been more brought on, it's just.
I do, I go by there a couple times a day, every day.
Yeah, I do too. You can see it from Connector Road now, and it's
So I don't not inclined to give them any slack, because I think these words misinterpretation, which is of course the polite way of your wording this, and I appreciate what you're doing for them, but I think they just thumb their nose at us, and I think we ought to stick to the regulations as strictly as we can.
Yeah, if we're not careful, we'll have people open car lots, and then they build the building about 2 years later.
Well, if we can get the plan approved, there's, they're gonna move forward with it. They have a plan pending now?
If the plan is approved, so we give it final approval, well, we've already given it final approval, just needs signed off by staff. How quick are they gonna move forward?
Have they got final plan approval?
Yeah, but, I mean, is it ready for signatures?
Yes, it appeared to meet the requirements.
So all it needs is signatures on staff, right? Till they move the RVs.
The only thing I can know of is they're working with the water company on the sewer line. And they've about almost completed that. They got the easements that they needed, and that has been a holdup, I know.
They're getting ready to start building.
I mean,
Give
later
it-
on, if they start developing this site, unless they keep a dedicated, clean lane to come in and out of there, if they aren't careful, they'll be pulling RVs out through, dirt and mud and tracking.
Well, I
down.
think they'd come down the property line.
I guess,
There's pavement all the way back.
Let me get a count on them. Ben, I'll get your permission to go and count them. And under conditions set forth in my letter, no more in. Keep the ones that are there, or take some of those out while we're asking for the plan to be approved. Make it look nice. We're gonna do a good job.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with them taking them out, just don't put any more in there. Don't bring anything in.
So we need to make a motion.
I would
to
say
approve?
if we approve this, we need to have a deadline of when this building's gonna start. And we need to also have a condition, if another RV is brought on that lot, all of them have to go. Period. No questions asked.
But it has a sunset clause, right?
Well,
Well, they're
that's got a
already-
ways to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2 years, but
Yeah.
at least it would have to
Yeah, but
be.
they're just waiting for signatures. They're already approved.
But I think what you do is make that part of your motion, Mr. Chairman, and if that's adopted.
I'm still
then that'll
not
be
sure I
one of the
wanna make a
conditions.
motion for it. I mean, I'm still.
Most people have inventories of what they've got. Can you get an inventory of what was out there a month ago? Would they have that?
You would think.
You would
They
think.
should.
Or,
Will they give it to us is the question, John.
well, yeah, but, you know.
You're
Well,
right,
would
to
you
be
trust,
honest.
would you trust what they gave
No, I
us?
wouldn't trust what they give you, but at least they give you something maybe. You know,
Ben needs something.
but
to do.
everybody, you have to, if you've got a business, you've gotta know what you've got. I
They know
think-
what they got,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, sure they do.
Wouldn't have to be Ben, it could be anybody, could it? Whoever has time. Run out there and
Yeah,
get
like
it,
they got time.
get count.
I mean, I'll go out there and count them. I don't care. I just, like I said, it's a sore spot in my, yeah, on me, that's all I know.
Can we do it?
It would require a motion,
It would require a
Second, a
motion,
majority vote.
second, and a vote,
Yeah,
I guess.
I would make that motion. I move that we allow them to proceed, that they, Bruce would relay that we're very serious, that we do not want another RV brought on the lot. And
Oh, yeah.
only RVs, the only way RVs can move through there is on their way out, not coming in.
Understand?
What about the counting them and?
I would be in favor of that if anybody's willing, whether it's you or staff, somebody go out and
I
get
recommend Ben, he's got
a
enough
count
to
now,
do.
and get a count. a
There
month
ain't no
from now.
basketball or football games to go to then.
I'll get Ben permission to go on the property.
Plus, what if any more is brought on? What do we do?
We pull it. Pull the approval.
Yeah.
yeah, make that part of the motion.
That's,
Make that part of
if
your motion.
anything else goes on there, yeah, it's,
By what date?
approval's been denied.
Do we want to set a deadline for construction to begin, or?
You know, not knowing, and I don't, nothing about it, but not knowing what they're doing with the water company and whether or not.
They've
you
got
know,
to put in a pump station, pump
Yeah, I
across
mean,
the
there's-
road. They're gonna have a lot of work.
Yeah,
to do
that
with
could
the
be
sewer and
a
stuff.
significant delay, so
I
without
don't
knowing
think-
all that, I don't think we can
I
really
don't think
put.
that needs to be part of it. I think it just, as long as they understand, don't bring any other RVs on the lot. It's
Yes.
one way. and that's only going out.
They got the same bunch in Lexington.
So you got a motion?
So we got a motion by Mr. Smith with several conditions. Everybody get those conditions?
What, Stephen?
I'll second that motion, what Stephen said.
We'll have a second by Mr. Solsky. We'll take a roll call. Ms. Mizell,
Yes.
a yes is to allow to proceed with the, signatures on the application so they can start construction. Mr. Smith,
Yes?
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Moran,
No.
Mr. Solsky,
Yes.
Mr. Wiseman.
No.
I'm also gonna vote no.
So 5-3.
But you're good to go.
I'm about to skin their teeth, or.
I'm gonna go.
It's on you. I
You
done
need to
told you.
sign this first.
It's on you, Mr. Langford.
We got an invisible ink.
No, this is different.
Mr. Langford, you better tell these guys, I'll be by that spot a lot during the day.
Really, I am.
I happen to know that they're getting getting bids to start appraisal for the construction.
I think they're gonna get it started, it's just
Yeah, it's
the
gonna
way
be-
they went about it.
it's not gonna be
is
too long.
Not what I like to see. Next item of business is, open space standards. Is that right?
Yes.
Which is a public hearing, so we'll have to open the public hearing. Matt?
Yes, I'm going to keep this fairly brief. My intention is that at the end of this, we can continue the public hearing again to next month and hopefully come back with some firm recommendations for changes to the subregs. I just wanted to get some guidance from the Planning Commission right now as far as how you think we should proceed.
See you, Ben.
So what we're looking to do generally is to modify the subregs to include a requirement that with PUD and non-PUD residential development that we get some parkland and open space in those. Currently, there's sort of a rule of thumb, if you will, an unwritten rule that if you do a planned unit development, we ask for about 10% of that to be park or open space, but it's not something that's actually codified in ordinance. So what we're looking to do is add a standard of that nature to the subregs. So what I have for you today is somewhat of a breakdown on some things that I've been working on as far as some proposals for this. So what I'm thinking we would do, since when I was looking into how we wanted to go about doing this, I think it's probably best to have some sort of metric by which we ask for open space rather than just a flat percent of an entire development, just based on one that applies to all. So what I've done here is I've looked into some options that are based more on acres of open space provided per 1,000 persons, or per 1,000 people that would be associated with that development, and that's what I have here. And so that's why we have it broken down by the different zoning districts, because our different zoning districts have different density levels. So without going into too much detail as far as how I came up with these, there's three options. This is sort of the area where I'm looking for some guidance. This low option is based on something that I pulled from our local Parks and Rec master plan. They suggest that neighborhood parks have about 2 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents. The high option here on the other end comes more from the National Parks and Rec Association. Cities of Georgetown size typically will have about 9.6 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents. That I felt like, personally, I felt like that was a bit too high, especially when we start looking at our multifamily unit, our multifamily zoning districts. I think it probably is quite excessive to ask for 20 to 28%. So I sort of, for what I think is probably a good option, and where I would like some guidance from the commission, is I did end up settling on sort of a middle option between the two. This medium option here is if we go with a standard of about 5 acres for every 1,000 residents. when we get into the multifamily, I don't think that this number is too onerous to ask for 11 to 15% depending on the zoning district. Areas that could be counted towards this open space could include things like trails. It could include some areas that they would lose to floodplain. It couldn't entirely be floodplain. So I think there are some ways that we can work with the developers on these. Just in case you were interested, I did include some numbers also for what I'm considering proposing for PUD developments as well. Basically what I did was I took the acres per 1,000 people that we were looking to propose for traditional developments, and I added 25% for the planned unit developments. That's mostly based on the fact that typically with these planned unit developments, they're asking for increased density, they're asking for reduced setbacks, they're asking for a lot of things that make it necessary for us to make sure that there's a balance there between what they're requesting and the benefits that are provided to the community and the people that move into those developments.
Is that the Wiseman edition? Since I think Frank made that comment, last month or month before? Wait a minute, you're supposed to be give and take. Where's the give? I believe is what you said. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that's what I have at this time, and I was just hoping for some discussion or some feedback at least about which of these sort of paths you think that we should be heading towards. Before next month, I am planning on scheduling a meeting with Parks and Rec in the city so that we can have some discussion with them about these as well. Before
So these open areas and park spaces, would that be up to the HOAs to take care of them?
I think what we're proposing, it's sort of up to the developer. It could be HOA, or if they're willing to work with the city on dedicating the land to the city, I think that could be an option. That's part of the reason we're wanting to talk to Parks and Rec, just to be sure that they're
When you
willing
mentioned
to.
that, that's what I thought too. Maybe Parks and Rec
take on
want
some
to
of that
take on
land.
the more
Yeah.
land,
I know that there are, maintenance costs associated with it. Park and open space would have to be mowed.
Who else has this? Other counties.
A lot of other counties have a regulation similar to this. There's a lot of variance as far as the percent of the land that is requested when the property is developed, though.
It'd kind of be interesting to see, a few of those.
Okay, yeah,
If you could get those next month.
Yeah, I've looked into some of that, and I can pull that together for next
And do
month.
some of those also involve impact fees? The impact fees.
That's
said that
yeah.
out
I mean,
loud.
I would say probably
that?
more in
He said
states
that out
outside of
loud.
Kentucky.
I didn't hear it. I left 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, probably more outside of Kentucky. I know I hadn't had an email discussion with Charlie. I guess a couple of months ago
And I
at this
left
point.
then.
And there's some debate about sort of the legality of impact fees in Kentucky.
So Matt, what's the time frame if this gets implemented?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's possible if we settle on something that we like next month. I mean, it could be that we adopt that next month or possibly the month after. So I'd say it's probably more reasonable to say 2 months from now. So probably the June meeting, just in case there's some alterations that you guys would like to see based on what we come back with next month.
And then it would still have to go to the legislative body, so there'd still be another round.
Yeah,
after
yeah.
that.
Give us an idea too what that would have done to this Yancey Griffith property out here.
The impact.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's so.
How many homes?
466.
That's a good question.
I think we wound up with 445 or something like
Depends on
that.
how they-
So,
And it does depend on how these changes end up being put into place. So what we've done here, and if you'll notice the my second to left hand column here lists the gross density. Typically, right now, we would base all of our how many housing units they can have off of net density. And I think in order to make something like this go smoothly, we would probably look to switch to calculating everything based on gross density. So they would probably have the same number of housing units that they were approved for at the last meeting. It's just a matter of how that gets configured and how much of the open space would be outside of the floodplain and things like that.
Yeah, they had the floodplain, which helped them out tremendously.
Yeah.
So.
Now, granted, they would likely be able to count a lot of that space that they had out towards US 25 because, it's flat space, it's usable in some way. It just would likely have been maybe handled differently. It would have been, or would likely be HOA space or something like that with maybe an access to it.
Are you looking for any feedback tonight, or just be thinking about?
Yeah, I think if you guys want some feedback about, like, I guess, are some of, is the low option too low? Is the high option good? If you hate the medium one, that's the type
the
of
medium
feedback.
option, maybe a little bit slightly
Yeah.
above the medium option.
Slightly above the medium?
If I could
Okay.
make a suggestion, because I think that the median sounds awfully good, but would it be possible to take, as that last couple of questions indicated, a couple of developments that we've done in the last, couple, 3 years, and just kind of make some possibilities with,
Yeah, I
that
think
medium option and
that's-
see what kind of impact that might have had.
I think that's something.
Because not
that-
everybody has that 150-foot setback or the flood, some don't have that. Well, kind of overlay that and just see what the possibilities might have
Yeah.
been. That'd be a good way to illustrate the impact of that.
I think we can do that.
Now, the floodplain would count toward this, right?
So sort of the ideas we're working with right now is that they would be able to count the floodplain as some. I think from some of our last discussions, we were thinking that the floodplain would only be able to count as about 25% of the required open space. Because the idea is not just that we need more open space, but that we need some parkland that people could actually use if they wanted to, I don't know, play some tag football or something like that.
If you want to
We
put
don't want
some
steep
sort of
slopes and things
improvement
like
on it, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, if an HOA wanted to put a playground or something, or Parks and Rec, yeah.
I think you should keep it simple. Instead of 3 points, just go 4, 5, 6, 14, 19.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, here, that would be the.
Thank you, Matt.
The developer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Still got some discussion going on? Feel good?
Just wondering how many parks have we got in the county right now?
Hey, Matt, I got a question about how many
How many
parks?
parks do we have in the county now?
That's a good question. In the count, I guess in the entire county?
Yeah.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can get that.
But that wouldn't count as this, though. This-
No.
this would be
So,
private.
so what we're thinking with this is that, if somebody brings in a development of 20 or more lots, they would need to provide open space with that development.
Okay.
In that development.
And a HOA would maintain that.
Either the HOA or if they can work out something with Parks and Rec, where Parks and Rec would take over the land and the management, then
That'd be
that
good.
would be acceptable to me as well.
I had some practice soccer fields here and practice
Baseball
T-ball.
fields or?
Yeah.
That'd help out. those kind of
Bill
things.
Wilson, I was on the first board, Parks and Rec. Old Bill.
Basketball courts.
Bill. Old Bill. Is that it?
Yeah, that's all that I had.
We're gonna continue the public hearing, is that right, till
Yes,
next
sir.
month?
Yes, sir.
Before we
continue
make
to
a
next
motion to
month.
dismiss, I just want to say, before we leave our church pews, could we get one more giggle from Miss Regina?
I'd be happy
Is
to
that
do
it? That's it.
That was
All
good,
right.
Regina.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
I figured you'd like that.
So sorry.